The Nintendo Switch continues to prove itself as an ideal platform for all kinds of genres, but there's something to be said for those games that let us explore the world as a fully formed character. You know the sort, those sprawling experiences where you're given the ability to grow and level up, evolving alongside the story as it progresses to better leave behind your own footprint. This practice is unabashedly best demonstrated in RPGs, and it's in this area in particular where the Nintendo Switch has continued to excel. That's why we felt it worthwhile to rank the 10 very best RPG games on Nintendo Switch. From classic style creature collectathons to fantasy adventures that aren't short on epic moments, these are the Nintendo Switch RPGs well worth investing in. I'm Aaron from Console Deals, now let's take a look.
Mum? Dad? I became a driver.
Sure, the definitive edition of the original Xenoblade Chronicles may be a decent jumping on point, but getting to grips with the cloud-laden world of Allrest is just as much of a delight in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This was actually one of the very few open world RPGs to release on Nintendo Switch around launch, tasking you to lead a small team of heroes trying to reach the mysterious world tree, all while summoning blades and defeating any foe that stands in your way. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is not just deep in its mechanics or vibrant in its visuals, but it's also incredibly sizable, hence why it's one of the 10 best RPGs on Nintendo Switch. It may have taken a little longer than initially expected, but in 2019 the Nintendo Switch finally received its first true Pokemon game in the English-inspired Sword and Shield, set in the New Galar region. It works similar to previous entries in that you must battle your way to the top of the Pokemon League, only this time you can do so while Dynamaxing your party, completing online co-op raids, and just generally exploring a new area known as the Wild Area. Elements like this help deepen Sword and Shield beyond that of a standard single-player campaign, easily making it one of the best RPG games on Switch, as well as one of the best Pokemon games ever.
I used to dream that when my God came back, he would forgive us.
The Nintendo Switch isn't left wanting when it comes to classic style RPGs, but few available on the platform replicate the feeling of a tabletop board game as much as Pillars of Eternity 2, Deadfire. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment, the folks behind Fallout New Vegas and recently The Outer Worlds, Deadfire is an in-depth RPG that story is entirely dictated by your decisions. You'll captain a crew and recruit companions while pursuing a god over land and sea, investing in a wildly deep storyline set against the backdrop of a vibrant fantasy world. Isometric RPGs on Switch simply don't get better than this.
The world tree marked out one among her children for greatness.
If you're looking for a sprawling third-person JRPG in the most classic sense, Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age ought to do it. This is the latest and greatest Dragon Quest game, which eventually came to Nintendo Switch in its most polished version, featuring traditional turn-based battles, a new top-down view, and an entirely remastered soundtrack, using real instruments this time. It's one of the 10 best RPG games on Nintendo Switch simply because it celebrates the RPGs of yesteryear, but zhuzhing it up for modern players with its fanciful art style and welcomingly lengthy story.
The fate of our world depends upon it.
He is the only ruler I would ever follow.
Traditional style JRPGs have to do a lot to stand out from the crowd these days. Luckily, Square Enix does this easily thanks to the unique risk-reward system found in the Bravely Default series. This marks the very first time that the franchise has released on a full HD console in the Nintendo Switch, presenting both newcomers and returning players with an all-new cast of heroes. Master the Brave Point system, assign your party with different useful jobs, and explore 5 ancient kingdoms, all in the hope of saving a world in crisis and in desperate need of your help. Bravely Default 2 features charming turn-based action and a thoughtful throwback story, easily making it one of the best JRPGs on Nintendo Switch. What first started out as a PSP exclusive series eventually made its way to Nintendo Switch, with Valkyria Chronicles 4 being the first fresh installment to debut here. Rather than set you off within a vast open world, however, its battles play out entirely in turn-based fashion, having you build up your own party of soldiers in the midst of a World War I style conflict where you must flank, charge and gun down strategically placed enemies. Couple this with an utterly beautiful hand-drawn art style and you have one of the best RPG games on Nintendo Switch, hands down.
What has become of this city? There used to be laws.
Following up 2014's South Park The Stick of Truth was always going to be tough, but Ubisoft arguably achieved it 3 years later with the release of South Park The Fractured But Whole. The Nintendo Switch version is obviously the best, not least because The Fractured But Whole looks just as good as any other platform. It still looks like an episode of the TV show, but you can also take it anywhere with you. You'll again play as the new kid on the block trying to make friends, only this time you take on the guise of a superhero rather than your very own fantasy character. Is this one of the best RPG games on Nintendo Switch? Oh yes, and providing you're of age, you're guaranteed lots of crude chuckles along the way.
God damn it! I can't put a child in a dark room for 2.
Still, we have no choice but to eliminate those who cling to unreasonable ideas of justice.
Fire Emblem is a series that really broke into the mainstream since the days of the 3DS, leaving fans frothing at the mouth for a potential Nintendo Switch entry. Fire Emblem Three Houses upped the stakes in every way when it eventually arrived, giving players the ability to play as 3 distinct factions while engaging in deep character relationships that take place outside of the traditional turn-based battles. Getting invested in such characters in this way makes losing them on the battlefield even more heartbreaking. As such, Fire Emblem Three Houses easily makes our list of the 10 best RPG games on the Switch. It's hard to imagine any fantasy fan who likes games that hasn't yet played The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. However, if you're one of the few people who fall into this category, the Complete Edition, which came to Nintendo Switch some years ago, is well worth checking out. So much so that it ranks number 2 on this list. This sprawling fantasy epic sees you hunt down evil monsters, take on item hunts, and lets you explore to your heart's content. The Nintendo Switch version also includes both sizable DLC expansions, meaning that the fantasy fun never need come to an end. Did you seriously expect any other game to top our list of the 10 best RPG games on Nintendo Switch? The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is not only a masterclass in subtle storytelling, but it's also one of the best games in which to lose yourself within a world completely unknown to you. This version of Hyrule has been decimated by Ganon, and only by waking up the 4 divine beasts can you hope to bring restoration to the land. Entirely replayable, utterly charming, it is the very best RPG experience you can have on Nintendo Switch. Go on and get it played. And there you have it for our list of the top 10 RPG games currently available on Nintendo Switch. How many of those mentioned do you plan on playing, and what others would you recommend people check out? Leave a comment with your suggestion in the comments section below. After that, feel free to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you want to see even more content like this. Until then, have a great bank holiday and happy gaming.